Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from Nomad65555. Whatever chainsaw I want, you say? Let's jump right in. This malicious compliance is not my own, but a friendly, vindictive old man who I'll call Fred that I worked with for around 5 months. As many of you know, I, male 18, do tree work for a living, and have for around 2 years now. My boss, who I'll call Duncan, is a 32-year-old hotshot and the owner of our small company, who can sometimes be a real tool when things aren't going fast enough on a job. Now, Duncan has an old family friend named Fred. Fred worked with Duncan's stepfather at a cement plant for 20 years, and is his stepfather's best friend. Fred also retired from said cement plant. Fred is the kind of man who would give you the shirt off his back, while being an absolute vindictive smart butt about you not having a shirt. However, Fred was working for Duncan as a favor, since Duncan was understaffed at the time. Because of this, Fred couldn't give a flying F about his job or what Duncan said or did. Fred took as many breaks as he wanted when he wanted to, and wouldn't hesitate to tell you where to stick your opinion if you said something about it. Fred is also a complete bull of a man who stands at a hearty 6'3" and 275 pounds, and easily makes Duncan, 5'10" and 160 pounds, look like a shrimp. So usually Duncan isn't too quick to bother him. So one day we're all doing our thing on the job. We had a big old pin oak to take down, so we were all in our usual positions. Jake up in the bucket truck, James running our ladder, and Fred and I chipping brush and shooting the breeze. Although I'll admit we were slightly slacking off. Duncan decided he was going to sharpen all of the chainsaws that were not currently in use, so he gets to work. Now, for those of you who don't know, sharpening a saw takes a while, and on top of that, all of our saws were extremely dull, so they took a lot of sharpening in 95-degree heat while being stooped down on the door of one of the boxes on our bucket truck. Duncan was sharpening saws for the better part of 2 hours, 8 saws. When he finished, we had the vast majority of the tree cut down, all of the branches were off, and Fred and I had long since shut down the chipper, and were taking our lunch since we had nothing to do, as wood is moved from the ground to the dump trailer by James in the loader. For some reason, the fact that we had 20 minutes more work infuriated Duncan. This is especially odd because the tree was coming down very quickly compared to usual, as it was Friday and we were all hoping to cut off early, as we sometimes did. Duncan flew off the handle, screaming at us for the better part of 10 minutes, which ironically extended us to 30 minutes more on the job rather than 20. And he ended his tirade with, "I'm leaving to go do estimates. Finish and go cut firewood at the yard. You will not be cutting off a second before 3:30. As Duncan stormed away, Fred piped up from the back of the group just as sweet as pie, with anticipation dripping from his voice, "Hey Lipstick, which saw do you want us to use?" To which Duncan replied, "I don't give an F," and stormed away. Me and Fred smiled at each other, thinking the same thing. When we arrived back at the yard, we began getting saws off the truck, from the smallest of trim saws to the largest of brand spanking new Steel MS 881 Magnum with a 42-inch bar that we used to cut particularly large stubs. Me and Fred both grabbed a saw and fired them up. We began to cut and cut and cut and cut. For almost 3 hours we cut firewood, making sure to hit the dirt with the saws as much as possible, and going through every saw until they were almost unusable from how dull they were. Trust me, if anyone knows how to dull a saw quick, it's a tree professional. Fred and I were having the time of our lives, dancing and singing and cracking jokes while we cut, while screaming to be heard over the painful wailing of saws being tortured. When 3:30 rolled around, we threw the saws back in the truck and went home, and I still swear to this day that I heard Fred singing at the top of his lungs as he rolled out of the lane in a cloud of black smoke, which may have been his crankshaft eating some gaskets. Monday when we got to work, we rolled out to the job site, and Duncan fired up the mammoth steel to crash a huge hickory tree in the middle of the woods. He began to cut, or should I say grind the tree. The wood was smoking from the terrible amount of friction from a saw that was as dull as it could get. Duncan stopped, he checked the chain, got another saw, and checked the chain, dull. He went through every saw and checked chains, getting redder and redder. He walked over to me and Fred. "Fred, Blake, why is every saw dull?" To which Fred responded, "Well, Duncan, you told us that you don't give an F which saw we used, so we used them all. That shouldn't be an issue, right, since you don't give an F?" To which Duncan sighed, knowing exactly what we did, and walked off to sharpen all the saws again. Fred was, is, and always will be my hero and my best friend. He is currently back to living the retired life of working on cars and fishing. Many days I miss him and his offhand comments, but I am carrying on his legacy of smart buttery. Can you imagine being there and watching Duncan take the saw to the tree and smoke just billowing out because it's just creating friction? Oh my gosh, that would have been amazing. Duncan does sound like a pretty good boss though. I mean, he took this and just went and sharpened the saws again. He knew he'd been beat. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our second story today comes to us from Small Squish. You need me more than I need you. Let's jump right in. So a while ago, I used to work as a shift manager at a very popular US coffee and donut chain. The owner of this franchise branch was extremely abusive, power-hungry, and sexist, which seems to be a trend on this sub. To put how outrageous her treatment of staff was into perspective, I watched this woman training a new male coworker once. He messed up a drink and she proceeded to throw the drink on the ground and demand he clean it up. She also demanded we include her when dividing tips up at the end of every night. Pretty sure that's illegal, but hey, I was 17 and didn't know any better. Anyways, I had this 30-something female coworker with 2 children. She was from India and would always bring a little extra dinner with her when we worked together to get me to try foods from her culture. She was such a sweetheart and a key player in this story. At the time, I had been working there for 3 years. I was a shift manager and was primarily in charge of training new hires for the closing shift. One day, my lovely female coworker comes in extremely upset. She explains that after working 6 days a week every week for the past few months, she was denied off for her son's birthday party. I immediately told her not to worry as I was free that day and would work for her no problem. I come into work early the next day when the owner was still in to let her know I would be taking over lovely coworker's shift on her son's birthday. Mind you, the date in question was almost a month away, so we were giving her plenty of notice. The owner says, "That will not be happening," with a smile and tells me to get to work. Something about her smile told me she was getting off on denying my coworker this day off with her family, and that crap broke something in me. For the next 3 weeks, I stewed. I wrote out my 2 weeks notice and kept it in a sealed envelope in my car. We were short-staffed and new hires needed training, so I decided to stick it out a little longer so that my other coworkers wouldn't have to pick up the slack. One day, I pull in for my shift and see that the owner is in. I walk in and hear yelling from the back. The owner is back there screaming at the group of morning shift workers in what I assume is Hindi. She then dismissed them and starts in on my lovely coworker and another coworker in English about how incompetent they are. At this point, I am done. I get between her and my coworkers and go off, telling her that we are all tired of her abuse and that I will not stand to see her targeting lovely coworker anymore, denying her days off out of spite. We go back and forth yelling for a bit and then she says, "If you don't like it, then get out of my sight." I reply, "I quit. You need me more than I need your crap anyway." She smugly replies, "I'll be needing you to hand in an official notice of that. You can come visit me tomorrow in my office." Little did she know, on this particular day, I had my resignation letter in my apron. Nothing felt as good as ripping that letter out of my apron and slamming it down on the counter, wishing all of my coworkers the best, and telling the owner to have fun burning in hell. She took me off the schedule for my last 2 weeks, but I heard from lovely coworker that the owner was having to work 12-hour days to work out hiring new people and training everyone who was coming in. Not crazy compliance, but darn it felt good to stand up for myself. I've heard a few times now about managers asking for an official notice of you quitting. Now, it's not true, you don't actually have to do that. You can quit at any time with or without notice, because a 2 weeks notice is a courtesy, not a law, and you don't have to give them anything in writing either. You can literally just walk out of the job, put it in your rearview mirror, and never think about it again. Our next story today comes to us from Master of the Abyss. I don't care if you throw up. Let's jump right in. Here is a short story on some school-related, mildly malicious compliance from years ago. This happened when I was in the 4th grade here in the US. All my teachers loved me except one. Let's call her Mrs. Strict. She was always a sour lady, and she was probably the only teacher that ever seemed to actively dislike me. I never did understand why. One day, partway through my class with Mrs. Strict, I began feeling nauseous. It continued to get worse, so after a while, I raised my hand to get the teacher's attention, and I told her I wasn't feeling well, and I needed to go to the school nurse. To my surprise, she told me no. I told her that I thought I was going to throw up, but she said she didn't care if I did throw up, and I better not move my butt from that seat. And so I didn't. I remember just thinking, seriously? Well, I am sure you can all guess where this went. From what seemed like the next several hours, but was probably only the next 5 minutes, I tried to just endure. I continued to get more nauseous. I could not really hear anything being said in the class. I was getting hot and flushed. You probably all know the feeling, and then it happened. I threw up all over my desk. Note that this was an afternoon class after lunch, so it was not pretty and it was not small. I just sat there at my desk, puke everywhere. I think a couple of the kids near me were freaking out and jumped out of their seats, but I didn't move. At that point, Mrs. Strict yelled at me to get out of her class and go to the school nurse. I kind of stared at her rather vacantly for several seconds, so she yelled at me again louder. I tried to tell her that she had told me I couldn't leave my seat, but I found I couldn't really speak yet after everything I had just thrown up. I continued to stare at her for several more seconds, with her not approaching me, and then I slowly got out of my seat and left the classroom. As I went through the halls up to the office where the nurse was located, I began to feel better. You know how you can sometimes feel so much better after you finally throw up? I imagine I was a bit of a mess as I passed through the office to the nurse's room because everyone stared at me. I explained to the nurse what had happened and included the part about being forbidden from coming to the nurse before I threw up. They had a sink and towels and things, and she let me clean up while she called my mother to come pick me up. I think that by the time my mother got there, I was feeling fine, but strangely enough, no one was inclined to let me stay at school for my last class. I would love to give you some awesome fallout from this episode, but I'm afraid that I don't really have anything satisfying. My mother had some stern words with the school principal before we left, and I was told that if I ever felt like I was going to throw up, I should leave class regardless of what the teacher said. I don't know what was later said to the teacher, but she had years with the school district, and it would have taken a lot more than refusing a sick student from going to the nurse to hurt her. Besides, I am sure she just told them that she thought I was faking to get out of her class. I was too embarrassed about the whole incident to even bring it up with the other students the next day. As I understand it, she just had the students move away from my desk area while the janitors came to clean up. We've really gotta thank our custodial staff because they do a lot of things that we wouldn't really want to do. Can you imagine what they have to clean up on a daily basis? No, thank you. I, for one, really appreciate everything you guys and gals do. Our last story today comes to us from Smile for 9mm. Whoa. Need a doctor's note when I return to work? Okay, let's jump right in. Note, this was pre-pandemic. A little background, at the time I worked at a large organization that had a staff of 1,000 to 1,500 people in a travel-related industry. As we all know about the travel industry, certain times are busier than most, and during those times, non-pre-approved vacation and days off, etc. are blocked out. If you call off sick, you need a doctor's note when you return to work. Generally, the management doesn't care because it's your sick time that you've earned. But we all have that one guy, by the book Bob we'll call him. By the book Bob got promoted because he was a company man, a yes man, a dude who drank so much Kool-Aid that it oozed from his pores. It was nearing Christmas time, busy holiday travel time, so it's all hands on deck, and several days before and after are blocked out for those vacation days, etc. This blocking out extended to past the new year. I came into work on Monday and went home feeling unwell. Nothing too terrible, just the feeling of malaise. Something a day's rest and a good night's sleep should fix, so Monday night I called in to let them know I was going to take a sick day to rest and recover and be at 100% for the impending holiday. So I call in, and who answered the phone but by the book Bob. I tell him that I'm going to take a sick day since I'm not feeling too well. Without skipping a beat, he says, "Remember, the holiday period starts tomorrow. If you call off sick, you will need a doctor's note." As I mentally imagine him sitting on the other side of the phone, all excited and happy that he reminded me of the doctor's note instead of wishing me well, I respond, "Okay, cool. You want a doctor's note when I get back, right? Otherwise, I'll get a write-up." "Yep, gonna need a doctor's note." Cue malicious compliance. Sure, no problem. What by the book Bob didn't realize is my personal physician is an old Asian man who gives 0 Fs. He's gonna take holidays off. He's gonna take extended time off, cause well, it's his office and he can. Guess which office was closed until a few days after the new year? Yep. Am I gonna go off to the local non-emergency room on a sick day to camp out for a doctor's note? Yeah, no. Am I gonna pay out of pocket to go to another doctor to get a note so by the book Bob can be happy? Most definitely no. I guess my only choice is to hang out at home, resting until the new year, and then pop in and get my note. So I do. When I'm finally done with my sick time and get my doctor's note, it's now nearly 2 weeks later. I head back into work and drop off my note to buy the book Bob when I get in. "Hey Bob, here's the note you wanted. You were gone for a long time, bro." "Yeah, you wanted that doctor's note, and I didn't want to get in trouble since you said it was required. My doctor's office was closed until just yesterday. You couldn't get the note anywhere else? You gonna pay for my doctor's office visits?" I smiled and walked out. I was reading through the comments on this story, and down below there was a doctor who chimed in. It says, "Doctor here with a tip. Most of us don't care and think that these notes are stupid. Just ask for a note for whatever date you'd like to go back. I have some ask me for all sorts of time frames. Want to go back tomorrow? Sure. Next week? Sure. 3 days after New Year's Eve, 17 days from now? Sure. They're a ridiculous control mechanism by companies, and I'll have no legitimate part in policing when someone feels well enough to go back to work. Just don't go back when you're actually still sick. Otherwise, whatever. If they don't want my note and recommended time frame, then don't have your employee ask." Check out all 4 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.